Oh man, I love hearing that because when you hear that music, it means it's time for another edition of the Rec Poker Podcast. This week it's the Forums edition. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home game. And if you want to find out more about me, you can go to rec.poker/crew because it takes a crew. It takes a crew, it takes a village to get something like Rec Poker going. And I am just one of many recreational poker wizards that loves to come and share their time with all of you, Rec Poker Nation. So, wizards, why don't you tell folks a bit about you and where they can find you?
I am John Somsky, and I am Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 everywhere.
Oh, and he's Tim Fritz, but for some reason we're not getting his audio at the moment. But you can find out about him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Tim Fritz. I'm Misclick Donkey everywhere.
Nice. I still love that handle, man. I can't believe you got to snag that handle. That's a really good one.
Can't believe I came up with it.
I can't either now that you mention it. So it's Monday night, so we're recording an edition of the Forums here in the podcast. We're playing in the nightly home game that's free, just play money for everyone to come and learn along. And one thing we do every week is we take a post from the Rec Poker Forums and we talk about it here on the air. And every week I put the word out, premium members are welcome to join the panel here if there's a hand that they're interested in talking about, or if there's a concept that's been troubling them and they want to get some ideas about. I see Rob's doing really well in the home game right now. I got a good hand going his way. Yeah, he's feeling good. So I want to thank Dave and John, who are here in the chat right now as well. And Dave and John, feel free to type in any questions that you have at any time. But mostly, I'd like to introduce Troy Chapman. So listeners to the podcast will know Troy from earlier episodes. He's done some Rec Room editions with us. He's been a consistent poster in the forums and in the strategy sessions, which is impressive because he's calling in all the way from across the world in Australia. So Troy, you are here because your good friend Flinny posted a hand and he couldn't make it to the show because of the time difference. So you're Operation Flinny here, is that right?
That's right. So Flynn and I are just a part of a small group who play down locally. We play on GG Poker. We play at smaller stakes, say up most of the games, I say up to about a $10 buy-in. And he had what we thought was a really interesting hand at a $5.50 final table, defending in the big blind. So Flinny couldn't help it. He's working. I'm on holidays. This is calling him direct from the beach.
Yes.
I thought I'd step in and say g'day.
Nice. And this is a first for the Rec Poker Podcast Forums edition. We're going to go to a video of our member Flynn himself giving us a little introduction into the hand and what he was thinking about as he came along there. So Troy, feel free to cue that up, or if you want to provide any context for us, go ahead.
I'll put it up. Just let me share screens and I'm good to go.
Yeah, that sounds good. So
if you click sharing screens, I can't do it yet.
Oh, I see. I understand what's going on here. We're hitting our audio cues on every front. There, try that now, Troy, and see if that gives you the ability. Here we go.
We'll just do this rock and roll.
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Hey guys, Flinny here from the Rec Poker Forums. Just believe you're talking about a hand I posted on the forums, and I thought I'd give a quick little rundown of the hand and sort of what I was thinking on the river, just as a sort of a bit of an intro to sort of the spot and sort of a little bit of context for you. So it's a final table of a $5 GG. I think it's just like the nightly turbo tournament, so it's quite cheap. Get quite a lot of runners, good value, bit of fun. Now we play pop. There's 6 of us left. We're 4th in chips. We play up against the villain who is 3rd in chips. So I guess that's kind of important just from the ICM point of view. We start the hand with 20. He starts the hand with 20 bigs. We have 17. Now we defend ace-8 suited from the big blind. He raises mid position. Flop is ace-5-5. He bets 1/3. We call. The turn is a 6. He bets 1/3 again. We call. And I guess the river is probably where the biggest decision was. I guess it always is, but so essentially there's a flush draw on board on the flop. The flush draw bricks. And we're facing a bit on the river of 130 again. So the pot on the river is 14.4 bigs, and he bets 4.77, and we have 10 total. So we've got to put the half of our remaining chips in if you want to see what he's got. So the way the hand played, I mean, if he's got a bigger ace, we lose. If he's got a 5, we lose. If he's got a flush draw, we win. And we beat random bluffs. So yeah, these stakes, it's very unlikely for a three barrel to be a bluff. So often I call here and they just show ace king and you just cry. But yeah, given the way I played the hand, I kept the pot small, kept all these bluffs in to try and pot control as well as pot controlling against bigger aces. So yeah, I guess the river's the biggest decision. I ended up folding. Just thought it was unlikely he was going to bluff. Because my hand looks face up. I've either got an ace or I've got trips. So it's unlikely he's going to try and bluff me off those two hands. So I did fold. In hindsight, it's probably a call. But yes, love to hear you guys' views. Let me know. Cheers. Hey guys, Flinny here.
Right on. Well, here, thanks, Troy, and thanks, Flynn, for bringing that in. It's great to have that context for the hand when we're thinking about the action. So
Yeah, so the forums brought up some really cool concepts. They talked about blocker bets and everything on the river, which I think we can get there. But if you'd like me to play the role of the hero,
yeah,
on a late position or mid to late position open, we've got ICM pressure. I think the call here is standard. I can't imagine myself raising. I'm definitely not jamming. And I'm not folding a hand as strong as ace-8 suited. Does everyone sort of agree with that?
so right now we're just talking about pre-flop. There's an open from middle position, and are we folding, calling, or raising is the question. It is a hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
With
so
20 bigs.
Yeah. And I don't think we can fold. What about the rest of the panels? Anybody want to argue for a call or a raise here?
Yeah, I think you just call there. I don't think it's in your jam. Like you would jam like some suited wheel aces there maybe, and then like your obviously like your Broadway aces, but it's just kind of right in the middle. So a call there is pretty standard. Never folding by any means.
No.
And this is the kind of spot that the problem with calling here is you're going to get in a lot of positions where you hit your ace and you don't know where you are. And so there is like, that's kind of, this is almost the best case scenario is a spot like this where you hit your ace and you're kind of unsure, but it still has, it's just too strong a hand to fold, I believe, in this case.
So old mate has opened a 2 1/4 big blinds pre, so we're flattered, and Flynn has decided to check here. I can't imagine leading.
Why don't we tell the group what the board is?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
5 of diamonds, ace of spades, 5 of spades.
Yeah. So ace 5
we've
5,
got
pretty
flush
good.
Draw, a paired board. Good for the big blinds defend range. I would suggest old mate shouldn't have too many 5s in his range, but he should have aces, and he's potentially got pretty big flush draws.
And I'd expect this is a board that I'd expect the original raiser to see bet at a pretty high frequency to a small size. So we're probably checking here about 100% of the time, especially when we have a hand like this. This feels like exactly the kind of bluff catching line we want to take here, a check call line.
So he's bet about a third pot. So he's bet 1.73 bigs into the pot, and I'm again, do we raise here? I couldn't imagine a raise here because we're still going to get smoked by anything that's a bigger ace. But is there a case for raising here?
So it's a down bet. So just for our audience, so the bet size is actually even smaller than the open raise, which is not uncommon in spots like this. So it's a down bet on the flop. It's something that he should be doing with a very high, at a very high frequency. So then you have to decide, what are the hands that I'd want to be raising with here, and is this one of those hands? To me, it feels like it's actually kind of too good a hand to check raise as a bluff and not good enough a hand to check raise for value. So it feels like in my first pass at it is that it does feel like a check call line. What about you guys?
Yeah, I
You,
like a check call here. You could raise, like, I would feel there was a diamond, right?
Yeah, diamond, spade, spade.
Yeah, I would feel better about a raise if there was no diamond, but we still have like additional backdoor equity because he's not going to have any fives in this range. Unless he specifically has fives and just flopped quads and flopped a stead. Like he might have ace five suited, but final table 20 bigs from middle position. That's kind of hit or miss if he's
Well,
opening that or not.
And interestingly, because we've got the ace of hearts, the
Yep.
ace of spades is on the board and the 5 of diamonds is on the board. So the only combo of ace 5 suited that he could have would be ace 5 of clubs because everything else is blocked by the board. So that's pretty unlikely.
Right. And that would be like the only five that he's going to have. I mean, he's
Right.
not going to be opening, 5-6, 5-7, 4-5, just not off 20 bigs. At least he theoretically shouldn't be.
Good point.
Theoretically.
Yeah. And if you were gonna raise here, what would be the purpose of raising?
Right.
I mean, ace eight isn't a powerful hand on this board. I mean, it's decent. You don't want to fold, but you're probably not raising and getting called by worse. So basically a raise is turning it into a bluff, and I think the hand has too much equity to turn it into a bluff at this point.
So we're trying to get to showdown as quickly as possible for the least amount of chips. Is that?
At this point, yeah, like if you told me
Theory,
that they were
right?
not going to deal out any more cards, and like I would say yes, let's get this baby to showdown right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
right.
and another argument there is like John was kind of just building off John. By raising, you're going to fold out any hand that you beat, which you don't want to do. Yeah. Like you want hands that you beat, like, to still bet.
I hear
Kings, right?
I hear Rob Washam talking to me about the Play Optimal Poker book study we did about a year and a half ago. We are in the middle of our range here. We don't have the polarized range where we should be raising. This is the part of our range where we should be calling and not letting our opponent play perfectly. So just like you were saying there, that makes a lot of sense.
So as played, Flynn check calls. The turn is the 6 of hearts. Flynn has checked, and our old mate, the villain, has bet 1/3 pot again. So he's now bet 2.87 bigs. And we're now down to around about 13 bigs left behind.
Mhm.
before we make our decision as to what to do here. So at the moment, we've got the ace with an overcard to the board. It's still a funky spot. So he's checked and the guy's bet. So we've now faced the second barrel.
How much is in the pot?
For our call, about 11 bigs, thereabouts,
Okay.
roughly.
Okay.
So we're heading towards a part where we're going to be committing a fair part of our stack.
Yeah, it's tricky when you're starting short like this, right? That
but
bottom
in
chip.
saying that, we were like in the chip leader type arrangement. We were sitting pretty at the start of this hand with only 5 left,
Mm-hmm.
and the 2 big stacks have come together like a train wreck. So he's check called. Personally, I would have played it the same way.
Yeah, what do you think, gang?
Yeah, I mean, again, like you still don't want to raise because, I mean, if you're beat, but you're getting such a good price at this point. Like, how can you not continue? To me, it almost, I mean, without like putting an actual hand on top of it, it really like feels like a pair, like some pair that's below
Queens,
an
jack.
ace, queens, jacks, even 10s, 7s,
Mhm.
9s, something that's not an ace, because an ace there, they probably would have bet bigger to try and incentivize us to just get it in with a weaker ace. It's a tricky spot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think when we look at the solvers, for instance, it's going to tell us that our opponent is going to choose this sizing with again a pretty wide range of hands, and that our actual hand is doing pretty well against that range, so we should call.
Yep.
And I think it's almost like an uncontroversial call in that case. If you're saying according to the strategy of the solver, if the other guy is playing GTO, then that's what we should be doing in order to maintain our minimum defense frequency. So we got a
Cool.
question from the chat here from Dave saying, off-end comment, I've always heard that a $5 online tourney tends to play like a much bigger live one, like maybe $100. And this is one of the things that I know Troy wanted to talk about today, because we're not playing against GTO computers. So we need to make different assumptions about the ranges that our opponents are going to be playing in these spots. So I think, so you know what, Troy, we do check call. Let's get to the river, because I think that's where the really kind of interesting conversation comes in. So let's we'll take us through there with the action, and we'll pick this
I'll
up.
take you through the river. So at this point, we're side checking. Side calling.
Yep.
And then we've got to the river. We've got about 10 bigs behind, and Flynn has checked, and the villain has bet 4.77 bigs. So half our remaining stack to call him off. So
It's a total brick river too. Yeah, 2 diamonds on the river. Yep.
Yep. So he hasn't got 3-4, so there's no straight. So he could have, obviously the big pairs that still might be trying to work out where they're at. The 5s has got a smoked anyway, and all the flush draws have bricked. So Flynn, then I'll run you through the hand. Flynn has checked. Our villain has bet 4.77, and Flynn has folded and then probably set fire to his laptop. Now, just to rub salt in it, the villain showed a single 9.
Now, did he show both cards?
No,
He only showed one card. Okay.
Yep. So I then ran that through a whole bunch of analysis, trying to work out if he's raised ace 9, he's probably figuring that if someone had ace 10 or better, he'd be 3-bet. And so they've got to have a worse ace than him. So he's just rubbed it. So Chris Jones made a comment, which I thought was really interesting, about making a small blocker bet. What I would like to ask the panel on behalf of Flynn is, what makes something a good blocker bet opportunity?
Great question.
That was something that Flynn and I couldn't quite get our head around.
Okay.
But yeah,
I like that.
And Flynn still is looking for donations to get himself a new laptop now. So,
yeah, that's right. So you can go to rec.poker and tag Flinny. Tell them, start the laptop fund. Go get a Kickstarter going. That's funny. So okay, so there's a couple things I think we should talk about. I want to talk about what makes a good blocker bet. I want to talk about the kind of play that you see at different levels, buy-in levels, and then we'll talk about the actual action on the river as well. So one thing, just before I forget, when we were listening to Flynn at the beginning talking about what their opponent could put him on, he said his action was pretty face up, and that he had to either have an ace or a 5, and that is what he was thinking when he was putting his opponent's range together. But I think actually Flinny could have 2 spades here, or some other hands as well, that this player might think they were targeting either as a bluff or with value. So I want Flynn to think about maybe widening his own perceived range for the kinds of hands he could have in this spot, and what that might mean for his opponent's bet. So first of all, why don't we talk about this thing that Dave put in the chat here? So do you guys have like a general rule for where the play lines up? Because I know like online, the stakes are much lower but the skill level's higher relatively. So do you guys have like a rule for how you decide what level you're playing on when you're playing in different tournaments like this, live versus online?
I don't think like necessarily like I have a rule like say like a $5 tournament's like the same as like playing $100 tournament because it's more money like when you play live. But I will say I think I could be wrong when I say this person's name, but I think it was Ryan LaPlante that put out a post a while ago about is a $3 online tournament tougher than $1,000 live buy-in tournament. And I think arguments can be made there, but I also feel like you're gonna have crushers no matter where you go.
Mhm.
Like I know several people that play micros and low stakes and just crush it and make thousands of dollars each month. But I also know people that play $100 tournaments constantly and don't make any money at all because they don't know what they're doing, but that's just what they like to play. It's just, yeah, like you just have to know your opponents and kind of their tendencies. And that's kind of where like having HUDs and stuff like that to grab hand histories on people comes into play. But you're gonna have good players and you're gonna have bad players, no matter the tournament, no matter the size. Generally, like yes, you'll see kind of some more people in the lower stuff light their money on fire in a sense. But those people, they're not at a final table. Like they're usually not at a final table. Usually you can assume that the decent players make it to the final table, I would assume. Like, yeah, you can get lucky and make it through, but for the most part, the people that light their money on fire, they're gonna be gone.
I feel personally attacked, Tim. I've made several final tables, I'll have you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A-
go
as
ahead.
far
Interestingly,
as-
Tim, sorry, John.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the comments that where it gets a bit interesting on GG poker in particular is it's a non-HUD game, so you can't get it's a well we actually love the software and the games and we can get onto it down here. You do get a fairly good pool of punters in the $5 and below. And it's very hard to actually strip them out unless you look up every person on SharkScope to get a bit of an idea of how regular they are. But that's just one thing. It's one of the downsides of not having a HUD, right?
Mhm.
And I tag the hell out of players when I play it. I try to, as the names keep coming up, you're a reg, and that sort of gear. But I won't go you through all the funny ones we have for the other tags, but they're there. Yeah, so anyway, I take your point. The HUDs help, but we have said that a $5 or $10 tourney personally is at least as hard as a $100 live because there's just as many minefields in a $100 live tournament. You got to dodge them all.
Yep.
I think there's a few things you need to keep in mind. One is overhead costs. So because overhead of running an online site is so much lower, they can afford to offer lower buy-ins. You could not go to a casino and play a $1 or a $3 tournament.
Great
If
point.
you did, you'd still have to pay $15 or $20 rake in order for them to just break even on the tournament.
Right.
So no one is going to do that. So that's one reason why, your smallest tournaments that you see are like 20, 30, 40, $50 tournaments on live, whereas you can get the $1 or $2 tournaments online. So that's one reason why there's the difference. The other reason is a lot of people are multi-tabling when they're playing online. They're playing 2, maybe 3 tables. So that means they're probably lowering their buy-in to be able to do that. Whereas when you're playing live, you're only playing 1 tournament. Typically, they say in most rooms that have a lot of ranges, the smallest buy-in and the largest buy-in games are the easiest.
Mhm.
And that's because the people who have money and don't care play the largest buy-ins. The people who aren't very good yet are playing the smallest buy-ins, and the medium buy-in players are people who can actually have earned the right to play there. If they didn't care about money, they'd play higher, and if they were better, they'd play higher. Or worse, they'd play lower. So it just kind of goes with the times, that type of thing. And I think it makes a difference what site you're on as well. I mean, years ago, I think a PokerStars $1 game was probably tougher than a $10 tournament on some of the other sites. I don't know if that's true anymore. I haven't played PokerStars for a while, for real money at least. So, but I do think there is definitely a deflation. The online games tend to be tougher. Online games, you're not getting the social interaction, so people who are playing there are playing more for the poker. Now, some of them don't care about playing well. There's still lots of bad players playing online, but they're interested in playing poker, not interested in going out and hanging out with their buddies.
Yeah, and we were talking before we started recording today, we were talking about that just a little bit to get started. And I think it's really important and true that we kind of circle something that John said there, and Tim as well, which is that in every game you play, you're going to find a variety of players. So there's always going to be a mix of players in the games that you play. Some of them are going to be better than you. Some of them are going to be worse than you. And whether it's online or live or a different format or something like that, all that really matters is that you are making good, accurate assumptions about those people and the ranges that they're going to play, the motivations for why they're playing, why they're taking the actions that they're taking. And it can get frustrating for us. And Troy, we've talked about this before. It can get frustrating for us playing in lower buy-in games where players show up with like unpredictable holdings, or like they play any two where they take these actions that like don't make sense. They're not good poker decisions. And it feels like frustrating to us because it's unpredictable and like, how do they show up with that there and that kind of thing. But it really is, it's an us problem if we're continuing to not make tighter and tighter assumptions about the ranges that they're going to take there. So I'm not sure if that really answers the question, but I think John blew it out of the water there with some of the reasons why, just logistically speaking, the game.
It's interesting. I had Flynn and I watched a guy that was online, a Twitch streamer by the name of All In Pav, who is a ex-Australian. Oh, he's Australian. I can't say he's an ex-Australian. He's just living in New Zealand. And he made a comment the other day saying that anything under an $11 buy-in, a lot of the things that you do, it's just anything under an $11 buy-in is a part. Anything over an $11 buy-in, the poker's different.
Mm.
And that was just a comment that he made, which sort of supports what John was saying as well. Mm-hmm. Anything under that, you've got the punters. Anything in the middle, people have got it to a level where they're happy to play poker. It's just interesting.
Yeah. And I should amend my comment a little, because like it's true that there always is a mix, but the higher you go, the fewer bad players there are, and the lower you go, the fewer good players you are. So there's kind of like a spectrum of that kind of thing when it comes. So that's true.
Yep.
For sure. All right. So in most situations, if we were saying like we're against a thinking player here, someone who's going to proceed with their own busted flush draws and stuff like that, like we've kind of under-repped our hand a little bit, I think, as well, or at least we've accurately we've sort of told them that we're in the middle of our range a bit, right? So that makes me feel like this is kind of a value bet with ace nine, just looking at it, because we haven't told them that we're like desperate to fold here. And I don't know, is this the kind of player that we think is going to be over bluffing here? Because what other hands does they have a 9 of hearts in that they take that? Like, there's not a lot of natural bluffs happening there, right? So it could be pocket nines, or it could be ace nine. I'm not seeing a lot of other ones. Do we think this is a player who's making good decisions, or, and sort of to Troy's point, how do you decide? Right.
See, I think after, you said that he showed a 9 specifically, like, I think that goes back to my point where I was kind of feeling like it was a pair the whole way. Because he could just be expecting us to jam any and all aces pre-flop. And so he doesn't think that we have an ace, but that's why he's betting so small in each street, is because if he does run into a 5, he doesn't want to go broke. And that's where I can see like the smaller bet on the river. because like any decent ace there on the river, like they're just going to put us all in and try to get max value from us. Versus like, like a pair of nines, for instance, they're still like, oh, okay, I could be ahead here. So I'm going to bet 4 big blinds into this 15 big blind pot. And maybe he folds, maybe he calls and I'm beat, but at least I didn't go broke. Because I feel like most aces there, even some worse aces than what we have, they're still going to put us all in or check. They wouldn't necessarily be going for thin value like that.
Mm-hmm. And there are some, take it, John.
I was just gonna say, if you look at the run out, it really didn't change the whole way.
Right.
So either we were ahead the whole way or we were behind the whole way. I would have had a really, and I'm not saying this makes it right, but I would have had a really hard time folding on the river because nothing changed. Unless they just had me beat the whole time. But because when I play the check call game, I tend to get pretty sticky because, especially when I'm doing it with top pair, because I'm underrepresenting my hand. I'm playing, I could have pocket nines or pocket eights and play this same way. A lot of hands that are much worse than my ace high. So I'm kind of setting them up to perhaps overvalue their hand. The bet on the river is a pretty decent sized bet. So I understand the hesitancy, but I don't think I could have folded there. Also, when someone flips over a inconsequential card like the 9 of hearts like there, that's meaningless for this board. That's just trying to get under your skin.
100%.
So I try to just pretend like I never saw that.
Yeah.
Because there's really, I mean, there's only 2 hands. Given that 9, there's only 2 hands he had that beat you, either a 9-5, which is highly unlikely, or a ace 9, right?
Right.
Anything else you had beat. So I would try to just put that out of your mind because he's trying to goad you at that exact point in time. But I think I would have had to call the river, but I probably have a tendency to overcall. So keep that in mind.
I think one thing that's jumping out to me is that in a spot like this where especially when the board comes like ace 5-5 and you're out of position and you're going check bet call, you kind of have to make a decision on the turn, I think, about what's going to happen on the river. Like, yeah, because if you just call the turn, this is the situation that's going to happen a lot, is you're going to face a river bet and you're stack to pot. I mean, your stack's getting pretty close to a pot size bet at that point. So I think when Flynn, if you're listening, so on the turn, when you're facing that bet, I think you need to decide right then, if I get another bet on the turn on the river about this size, am I going to call it or not? Because they're going to be consistently betting like that a lot. And if you're not, then maybe just fold the turn, honestly. But if you do call the turn, I think you owe it to those previous branches of the decision tree to call that river bet, because that's the way you've kind of like set it up to go. Tim, what does that make you think?
I was just gonna add that realistically in this spot, I'm either going broke or I am gonna win the pot. Like I'm the more I think about what I would have behind, like I'm never flatting there. I think with the way the action went, I think I would just jam and
get ready to reload if need be.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if I go out, oh well, it was final table. But at that point, like I'm calling the river there with the intention of if it's another blank that I'm getting it in, especially when they do a little bet like that, because the point of that, I believe any bigger ace than what we have is going to put us all in anyway. And then we have an argument for folding.
Right.
But before them not putting us all in there, it's like it's either super milky or it's something that's afraid of an ace.
Rob?
I'm looking at the SPR, on the flop. And typically in that situation, if you get a hit pair, especially top pair like that, you're just jamming. What are you waiting for? Why are you playing that hand?
Mm.
Are you playing that hand so you can get a nut flush? Is that why you're playing ace eight?
I mean, that is a
Um,
nice thing that happens sometimes, but yes, I agree.
Well,
That can't be
yeah,
the only
but
reason you're playing
That's
it.
so
Yeah.
remote. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you hit an eight there, you might be looking at a SPR situation that says, "Hey, I just need to jam this."
Mm.
But so with that SPR though, that's going to be based more on chip EV though, isn't it? At where we are at the state, we've got 20 bigs. We're one of the big stacks with ICM consideration. So
Then
my
in
thinking
that
with that being,
case-
I completely get that
Yes.
part, but I would be
I
very
agree.
considerate of that. Yeah.
I agree there that when I'm talking about SPR and jamming, normally ICM considerations are not there, right? If it's just strictly an SPR situation with no ICM, then yeah, it's an easy jam. Now with ICM, now you have to question your decision pre-flop.
Mm.
Should you have even been involved in that hand? If you're going to get involved in that hand and then have a flop like ace 5-5, what better flop could you ask for with the hand that you have?
Yeah.
What are you hoping is going to happen?
Yeah.
Is my question. So if you're going to get involved in a hand like that, you almost have to jam it on the river or on the flop when you flop an ace. It just, so be it. Otherwise, fold pre-flop and go on to the next hand.
Yeah. I also
Maybe
like the
we're being
idea.
results oriented here.
Yeah, it is nice that he showed us that nine of hearts, right? That does open things up a little.
Yeah.
And even if you decide to check call the flop and then get frisky on the turn, you're going to have a pretty shovable stack at that point, and then you get that extra bet. I think Rob's absolutely correct in that. What flop were you hoping to get? Because this is a pretty gin flop for you, to be honest, given the stack size. So
And you also have he has the nut advantage, but we have the range advantage. Is that right?
well, we've got more
That could be
fives
a
than
quick-
he does, so he's
Yep.
he's probably still got range advantage. But we've
Yeah,
got nut advantage.
He'll have the equity advantage, but I think we're gonna have more nuts there than what he does. I mean, he's still got all the overpairs.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have more fives.
Yeah, he's got
so-
pocket
so
aces.
We've got
and we don't.
so which one have we got? We've got the nut advantage. He's got the range advantage.
Yes.
Yeah, and the nut advantage, it's not gonna be like we have like a massive advantage. We're gonna have like a 1, maybe 2% advantage.
Mhm.
It's gonna be tiny, and then he's gonna have the equity advantage of probably like 10%.
Yeah. So it's definitely still a better spot for him, but we do have that kind of scary spike. So I wanted to talk about blocker bets, but I think we should save that for another episode because I also want to do an episode talking about leading on the turn and leading on the river, and I think blocking bets would be a good complement to that. So let's save that little notion. But so gang, think about any other points to make on this one. I'm just going to scroll through the forum post itself. So I mean, everyone, we don't have. This is just an audio podcast for the most part. We do play it on YouTube, and so if you get a chance, you can go to YouTube, and sometimes we share a screen and we show graphs or charts or EV calculations or things like that, and that's very helpful. But really, you should just go to rec.poker and sign up in the forum there, and you can see this one got a ton of responses. We've got Chapo, Flinny, Jim, Sir Gas Leak, 7 High 11, 5x5, TV Stems B. Lots of people contributing their thoughts here, and also some people like Tron Vidar uploading an ICM spot that he's broken down. And there's some really sweet charts and graphs here that help you understand why certain cards are better than others and how certain runouts are going to work for your favor. And there's some great screenshots from Flynn. I just love the way that people can get into the forums here and really share their ideas with everybody else. So go check that out. Gang, any other thoughts on the hand here? Or Troy, was there anything else you wanted to address before we move on? I think as played, I really like that Flynn is thinking about what are the combos of hands that our opponent has that beat us, what are the combos that they're bluffing with, and And he makes some really good points in the forum post about trying to find hands that aren't an ace or a 5 that take this line. And he doesn't find many of them. But when he shows that damn 9 of hearts, that really does kind of put a kink in that line of thinking, doesn't it? So I think as played, I'm probably calling on the river. I don't know if I'm shoving. I'm probably just check calling on the river, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find a fold there, even though I think Flynn makes some really good points about the hands that the other guy could have. All right. Well, any other thoughts to send us out of here, gang? If not, I will just thank Website Amp and Mark Prashon, Evil Roy and John for hanging out in the chat, Flinny for writing in, Troy, John, Rob, and Tim for joining me this week, and you, the listeners. Thank you so much. See you again soon.